Great. Thank you so much, Emma. I think that was incredibly insightful, not only in how, children with disabilities, what you can do to support them and assist them, but also, as you mentioned, the very important fights that we need to take, uh, positions we need to take in order to ensure safety. We do have a few questions and comments from the audience, so I'm just going to quickly share them with you. The first is from Susie, who almost as soon as you came on said, Emma, you are incredible. So it's good to see that we have quite a lot of support. And then on the last section that you were talking about, Ari mentioned it was really great insight. And then Susie also said it's an absolute disgrace and antiquated and disrespectful of the scale. And then she also said, thank you, you are a hero and well done. And then back to the section on children with disabilities, Raven just asked, it seems to be easier to include kids in activities when they're young. Any tips for parents dealing with adolescents, teens, and even grandchildren?
Oh, really, really important question. Thanks for raising that, because there is a focus on ECD, early intervention, foundation phase, absolutely. But especially if we're trying to integrate children with disabilities into mainstream high schools, for example, for me, the biggest thing is setting the scene. We can't integrate children with disabilities. For example, teenagers are revolting anyway. If they see any difference, they get picked on, bullied. It's about creating the environment, preparing the environment for, that was another thing that I have done. It's looking at sensitizing the staff, sensitizing the teachers, sensitizing the children before a child with disability comes in. Obviously, you're just going to set them up for failure. And it's about it's about tackling disability head on. So you would get people, for example, adult wheelchair users going in and chatting to the kids about, this is disability. I mean, Vic does a lot of that, and it's really great, giving a face to disability, because we also make the assumption, okay, well, the child with disabilities will go in and become the role model. No, not necessarily. What happens just in terms of their confidence, in terms of, has the scene been set? Are we just setting them up for failure? Are we setting them up to be bullied, to be teased? It's looking at putting things in place like a buddy system. So you always, you've got a teacher's allocated a child who, has some empathy and not an, oh, shame, look how wonderful I am, I'm helping the poor child with. It's about building relationships. It's about setting the scene, making sure that the bathrooms, the classrooms are accessible before the child with a disability gets in. That's in a best case scenario. But we know that some of our children will be all the way up to, say, grade 10 as part of the school. So they've been with the same children all the way to grade 10. December holidays, involved in a taxi accident, they become wheelchair users after that. So we're looking at reintegrating our children back into our environments as well. So for us, it's getting communities sensitized, disability sensitization for communities, because they'll realize, okay, I do work in Madagascar, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. The biggest focus is on sensitizing communities, sensitizing parents, sensitizing schools, and then giving your input on your actual disability specific tools. And as I said to you before, it has to be customized to the individual learner. No two kids are going to be the same. So we just really need to establish what is this particular child's strengths? How can we use those strengths to be able to tackle some of the challenges they may have? So teenagers it's difficult, but unless you get the environment prepared, I'm really worried about just dumping. You can't just dump children in and then they fail and we go, oh, we tried and they didn't fit into our school. We need to swing it around. The school needs to be prepared for the child with a disability.
Yes, 100%. That makes complete sense. And yes, I think that's also why your articles are so important, because it actually has step-by-step instructions, and especially the most recent ones go into a lot of detail of all the forms that need to be completed. From my side, one of the big things I just think we need to quickly touch on is, why is it so important to have this entire group of people participating in supporting the child?
Absolutely. And we need to work holistically, because so we've got support structures within the school. And then we've got, if teachers don't have the tools, we also need to look at what resources are in the community. So we need to partner with disabled people's organizations and say, so we're having a wheelchair user, we don't know what to do. They need to partner. They need to see what support is available within the school, within the district that supports, and then you've got, we've got district, we've got province, and we've got national. which I have just covered in the recent article. But many teachers and many department officials, unfortunately, don't know about the policies. They don't know how to use those as a tool. And that's why another big focus is on teacher training students, just trying to give them the skills that when they go into schools, because they all energize a bunny, they want to change the world, they want to change the system, is trying to work with existing teachers who are dinosaurs and don't want to change. No, those children must go off to the special school. We can't have them in our, so a long way to go. So to me, it's education is the only way we're going to get through that.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. So that's all of the questions that I have and that our readers had. I think you really touched on quite a lot in this session, and I think it was very, very educational. Is there anything from you, Raven?
Yes, I do. I do. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and also to you, Emma, for fielding the questions. Children all over the same. Do we have to have any special precautions or special way of addressing children with psychosocial disabilities, or children than we have to the children with physical disabilities?
Absolutely. And the biggest thing there is stigma attached to disability, and especially psychosocial. Your depression, your bipolar, your anxiety. And if you think about how many children are now, we're going to start seeing with COVID, we're going to see so many more cases of children with anxiety and depression because of lockdown. So we're expecting a peak in those areas as well. And again, it's back to awareness. It's back to, if I have a headache, I don't even think twice, can I take a Panado? Now, in terms of medication, for some psychosocial disabilities, they need medication to function, and the stigma attached, and trying to normalize it as well. Yes, we do have cultural factors where you get some people, is it the ancestors passing down messages and then we shouldn't medicate, or is getting therapy seen as a weakness? So we've got a long way to go, and a lot of it is parental. Parents are ashamed and embarrassed because for wheelchair users and deaf and blind, there isn't necessarily that stigma attached to the type of disability as well. So it's about creating awareness and saying, parents, it's not a curse put on your family. It's not something that you did when you were pregnant, mom. It's a chemical imbalance in your child's brain. Sometimes it's passed on from generation to generation, and dads often, in many cases, passed on from the father's side. And the lack of acceptance and so we've got it's about sensitizing. It's about destigmatizing. It's okay to take medicine. It's okay to seek therapy. It's okay to have bad days, and what support is available. And things like epilepsy, just in terms of just giving parents and communities and teachers training on what to do. Don't put spoons in your mouth. Don't try to put your hand. You're gonna have your finger bitten off. And the fact that, oh no, we need to stop them they're not going to be able to breathe when they're having a seizure. That is the last thing you should be worried about. You should be making sure that the environment is safe. That we pop pillows if you can, blazes if you can, under these children's heads. Just be with them, monitor them, get the rest of the children out of the classroom so we don't have the balking, the staring. Because yes, some children will wet themselves. There will be saliva, they might have hit their head, there may be blood. But it's about dignity, and it's about creating awareness that, it's just, for that, think of electricity. Just bring it down to education to the level of the children. So if you're going to go talk about brain connectivity, you're going to lose them. Give it to, depending on the age of the children, we need to put the information at the correct level. And there's nothing wrong with the child. It's just who they are and what can we do to accommodate and keep them safe.
Wow, thank you very much for that. And then lastly, in terms of support, we all know how important and we care for frontline workers are and the healthcare workers in terms of support for educators and the preschools and especially the early childhood development. And I asked that about with the increase of ADHD, as you've mentioned. See, and then the children being treated differently than their peers. Are there any support, or is there sufficient support from our government? Are they aware of the rise in incidents of that? Especially as you mentioned, some congenital and some also acquired disabilities. So just touch on the support that is or the lack of.
Sure. And again, often it comes down to a lack of awareness, a lack of teacher training. But to me, the biggest thing is your view. If you see a child is different and they need to be fitting to my sausage factory mold, or all children need to be sitting, all children learn best by sitting at their desk looking at me teaching from the blackboard. Again, back to some of those older dinosaur teachers. We need to look at how can we use different modalities. So our lessons need to change. How we teach needs to change. I mean, there are significant differences between children with ADD, attention deficit, as well as attention deficit with the hyperactivity, ADHD as well. And many, I mean, I used to teach in a remedial classroom, and then, but there's nothing wrong with these children. Why are they in here? And it's purely because the teachers were using, sitting at the desk, looking at the blackboard. If you allow children to move and vary your activities, there's a long way to go. But having said that, there is a time and place for medication. And I've also been in schools where the teachers draw any child who feels a little bit jumpy today can go help themselves. These are not smarties. Please, these are scheduled medication, and your child needs to be diagnosed before they can't just help themselves to the classroom pool of Ritalin, please. I've seen some scary things there too, but it's about and also teachers. If we find that children with autism, for example, and children on autistic spectrum, and children with psychosocial disabilities, many actually really thrive in a predictable environment. So if we stick to routines and give children tips about what change is going to happen. So today, daily schedules, and whether it is written or whether it's got pictures to work out what's going to happen. That also helps to reduce anxiety, and predictability is really, really important. But again, I would like, if there are any teachers or any parents or any therapists out there that would like some individual input, please, I'm always open to suggestions, open to topics that you would like me to cover in the Rolling Kids. It needs to be relevant to your needs. So please, suggestions are always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that offer, especially to the public out there or teachers that might require some assistance or advice in this time. But Dr. Emma McKinney, thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution, not only to Rolling Inspiration, but to the lives of our many kids out there. Thank you very much for participating.